now I'm going to try to explain sort of where we're going and get people to start thinking about um, the essays, right? The bigger essays. Okay, so here are the three big things that we're doing. Essay 2, which is an annotated bibliography, sort of what we're doing this week. There's the literature review, and then there's the research argument, those two things. So the reason for your annotated bibliography, the reason it's so important to make sure that you're making that connection to other sources, saying this is like that, is that the literature review is basically all about that. It's basically an actual essay in which you discuss the different arguments that each of the articles making, and you're trying to demonstrate the connection between your different people, your different writers, right? So you'll have 8 articles or 8 sources, and the literature review, it's basically trying to be like, okay, I have these 8 sources. Here are the 3 main ideas that I'm dealing with, and here's what each of my sources talk about. So I tried to come up with some templates. So here's a template, for example, for essay 3. So this is the literature review. So after you have your sources and you've done your annotations, this is an example of it. So in order to discuss how the narrative about blank, whatever it is, has started to change into the narrative that states blank. So you have basically the old narrative, and you describe it a little bit. Then you have the new narrative. It is important to use the theory of narrative paradigm and to look at blank, blank, blank. Okay, so this is where we're trying to bring in the narrative paradigm, which I know you're all super psyched about. But I will show you, and I don't know, hopefully it's fairly easy. So for example, by using the narrative paradigm as how the narrative of blank has changed, it's important to examine blank. All right, so that's another sort of, so those are the 2 templates that but here's what I'm talking about. Okay, this is what the literature review's job is. You're basically investigating and talking about each of the narratives, and you're trying to relate it to elements in the narrative paradigm. So I've selected these parts of the narrative paradigm, right? That we can use. So for example, one of the things you would be looking at, if you say that the old narrative was this and the new narrative is this other thing, one thing you're thinking about is in what way has, remember, the coherence of the original narrative weakened or fallen apart, right? So you're looking at the old narrative, and there's a reason that it's old, right? There's a reason that it's no longer dominating. It's because of what? So something about the old story, the old narrative, has broken down. So you're trying to look at what that is, and all you're doing is calling it coherence because that's what narrative paradigm wants us to call it. So you're looking at how has the old story in and of itself sort of broken down, like what elements are no longer true or real or whichever. So that's what these are the questions you are going to sort of want to be able to answer. So in what way has something like technology or war or medical discoveries changed the universal value that people once identified with from whatever the value was in the old narrative into the new narrative? And that's just, again, remember we talked about that fidelity or whatever is all about universal value. So in the old narrative, for example, in my world, the old value was knowledge, right? College was all about getting some knowledge, and that was where you had to go to get knowledge, and that was the universal value, was getting knowledge. That has sort of changed because it's no longer just at the college, right? Because you can get information everywhere now as opposed to just at college. And so I would talk about how that's sort of changed, and that the need to know older types of knowledge may not really be very relevant anymore. Like everybody has to know this, like has to have read these books and know this basis of things, and anymore sort of like, okay, yeah, maybe, but also people need to start knowing how to code and all these other things. So you're asking yourself these questions about the two narratives. So in what ways have the characters, the plot, or the setting of each narrative altered? So how has it changed? So in the olden days, you had students and you had teachers who were delivering knowledge. That's what college was. The plot was people paid money to colleges, showed up in colleges, gave them knowledge, then they went on to get a job. Okay, the plot has sort of changed because you no longer just need to go to college to get information, right? You can get information anywhere. And in fact, you might need skills somewhere else that are offered by something else somewhere else, as opposed to a college classroom and so on. So this is what I would say. So basically, these questions are trying to make the connection, or help you make the connection between the two narratives that you have and then the narrative paradigm, talking about it in terms used. Okay, so here's what's super, super important if you're still listening. It's so weird. I mean, I'm assuming. Who knows? Oh my God, the sun's in my eyes. Hold on. All right. So what's super, super important right now, and what I want everybody to do this instant, whatever that means, is click on the live class thing, and I want everybody to give me their narratives, right? The traditional narrative, and then I'll type mine in again. And if you want, you should be able to see this whole thing, right? If you want to go back to an earlier day, like if you were somebody who already posted it, you can copy and paste it. That would be fine. But I want to help everybody. So this is a chance right now to make sure that you know what I'm talking about as far as your traditional narrative and your newer narrative, so that I can help people. I'm going to put mine up here then. So I have my two narratives. Basically, college, the old narrative, college is essential because it provides information and teaches skills necessary to succeed. Then I say, actually, success in American life requires skills and knowledge that can be learned in a variety of different places. That's just the newer one. And then major elements that are causing this change, right? Technology, the internet, information access, the new jobs and careers, having multiple jobs. These are just some of the elements that have, are part of the new story of higher education in my mind. So yeah, perfect. So video games being an example, right? The old narrative's pretty obvious. I mean, the old narrative is they're just entertaining and they're mostly a waste of time and a distraction. That's the old narrative. And then the new narrative is very clearly that there's a bunch of research that they're important for various reasons and they help people learn and all sorts of things. So I need to come up with 3 ideas. So in my little, if people can look at their class notes thing, so in my little template, I say, in order to discuss how the narrative about, and then I name my first narrative, which is the traditional one, the need for everyone to go to college in order to succeed, has started to change into the narrative that states many skills and information for jobs in the future are available in other places. It is important to use the theory of narrative paradigm and to look at how the coherence of the traditional narrative is broken down. That's one thing I'll do. To look at how technology has changed learning, and to look at how the universal value of being educated has changed more into the universal value of having a productive job. Okay, the 3 things you choose, however, right, these you want to have articles and information, right, because this is what you're going to talk about in the literature review. So I have these 3 main ideas, and what I need to make sure that the ideas that I'm choosing, I actually have articles and information about, because this is what I'm going to talk about, are the 3 main things. Yes. So the question is, depending on what page people are looking at, the question is, are we able to use a YouTube video as one of our sources? Like a TED Talk would be the answer. Yes, you can do that. You just also, you want to make sure that you find out about the person that's going to be something which shouldn't be too hard.